Begin. All right, welcome everyone. It's my pleasure to welcome you to our CTL 5708. It's our community class. Some of you were with us last week when we had a community class in our leadership course, which was LHAE 1042. So I want to remind everyone that these community classes are official classes of the University of Toronto. So these are not just DR.ABC class. These are official classes of the University of Toronto. Our students who are registered students are in the classrooms, and we share that with community. We have come to discover and value and understand the power of community when we learn from community and learn with community. And this for me is a treasure chest. And I love when community shows up. Tonight, it's going to be, or this evening in our class, it's going to be a community panel. And I want to say hats off and enough love to persons I see in the audience who have been on my panel before. And so it's just amazing. I see past students also. I think I see you, Serene, some of my past students who are just out there doing the best, and they're still coming back in the space to learn. And that for me says a lot. This evening in our community class, we have an amazing panel. Each of our panelists, when they get to speak, they'll introduce themselves. So we have Trina, we have Shalita, we have Matthew, and we have Doreen. And we're talking this evening about Black students mattering. What does it mean when we say Black students mattering? And we are focusing on identity, affirmation, and love. So in our conversation this evening, that's what we are focusing on. Affirmation, identity, and love, and Black students mattering. And each speaker will be bringing conversation from their lived experience, from their experience as a classroom teacher, experience as a leader, as an administrator, as a parent, as an uncle, whatever position, what it means for Black students to matter. And some of you who just joined, you saw that article, that video that I was showing at the beginning about how much we are working to change Black students or change students and not looking at what we do within the system. And that's the difference what we want to really get into. At this time, however, I'm going to begin with the land acknowledgement and an ancestral land acknowledgement. And so give me a minute. And so at this time, I'm going to be calling on two of our students who will be sharing that. So I'm going to ask Sarah Mohammed, if you can turn on your mic and you could go ahead with our land acknowledgement.
Thank you so much, Dr. ABC. Good evening, everyone. I'll be reading the land acknowledgement. So we do want to wish to acknowledge this land on which the University of Toronto operates. For thousands of years, it has been the traditional lands of the Huron-Wendat, the Seneca, and the Mississaugas of the Credit. And today, this meeting place is still the home to many Indigenous people across Turtle Island. And we are so grateful to have this opportunity to work on this land.
Thank you so much, Sarah. Thank you so much. And Sarah is not only a student in my class, but is also my GA. I like to say those things when I do these conversations for you to understand also context and what happens within institutions. Getting an opportunity as a TA and a GA is still something that our students have to apply for and put in a pool of number of students. And you get to see who get those opportunities and who get access to those things. Thank you so much, Sarah. We're going to move on to our ancestral acknowledgement, and we're going to call on another student who is going to do that. I think, Nikita, you're in the room. Go ahead.
Hi, everyone. And so with our ancestral acknowledgement, we acknowledge the Indigenous Africans who are forcibly removed from their native lands and dispersed across the New World. This involuntary migration heavily contributed to the movement of African-descended people across the African diaspora to places like Canada. As students and learners, we deem it highly necessary to think deeper and examine the processes that led to the dispossession of Indigenous peoples on this land and settler colonialism. Stolen people on stolen land. In entering a conversation about anti-Black racism, it is important to center the humanity of Black children and Black families and to examine systems such as the education system that act upon them. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And I'm going to leave it up for another 2 seconds if anybody want to take a picture of it. I always think about those things like myself. Remember the first time I was exposed to an ancestral acknowledgement I will never forget. And when I was exposed to that couple years ago, and every time I go to an event, I take a picture of the ancestral acknowledgement. I use them. I learn from them myself because we are in that constant learning mode. So many of us, especially as Black people, need to constantly understand who we are, our value, our relationship with the land, with the spaces we are at, how we were brought here, how we came to be here, and who we are as we continue to live our best lives. And so for me, this is very, very important. All right, we're going to get right into the conversation at this time. And so what I want to do is, as I said before, we have 4 speakers. So this is the order of this evening. We have 4 speakers. Each person will take 10 minutes and introduce themselves and speak on the theme. And then we'll go into asking each person an intentional question, a very, very intentional question that they'll have about 2 to 3 minutes to respond to. And then we'll take questions from the audience. And at the time of the audience question, I will also join in to respond to questions. So myself and the panel will have the opportunity to respond to those questions. So thank you so much. So at this time, we're going to move over and I'm going to make way for Matthew Sinclair, who is going to be our first presenter, first person who is sharing. I just want to say thanks again to persons like Matthew. They are people for me. If you look at my social media, I talk about being in community, investing in community. These are persons that I know and have interacted with over years, and I've seen their love and passion for community. And so for me, these are the kind of people that we want to hear from to ensure that our students understand what it means and so that you understand what it means to take care of our Black children. So Matthew, it's over to you.
Thank you so much for that introduction, Dr. ABC. I feel very privileged to be here, as you mentioned, not just the idea of being in community, but working with people on different steps in their educational journey, and also just having that grounding and continued learning, because every time I'm in a space with you, especially when you're bringing others together, I'm guaranteed to learn from them as well, and from the questions that come out of the space. So as Dr. ABC said, my name is Matthew Sinclair. I'm fortunate to have the title of coordinator, which is the lead of the department in Equity and Women's Services at the Provincial Elementary Teachers Federation of Ontario office. I've been in this position as coordinator for the last couple months, but I've been at the office for about 6 years. And I proudly say that I know that, speaking of community, a large part of why I'm in this position is because of the grassroots movements that were done years and years ago within the membership and within outside community to push for anti-Black racism strategies like the one that we engaged in for a good 5 years. And that led to my hiring. I'm also the only Black male in my position. I have had the opportunity over a variety of years to travel and meet folks through the Canadian Teachers Federation. And I'm yet to meet another Black man who has a role like mine, which is something that I'm very mindful of because, as we all know, and one of the main themes I wanted to touch on is the idea that as much as I love my position, I love education, I'm grounded in the fact that I'm Black first and I'm an educator second. In terms of the work that I do, the way that I navigate the world, I'm always very aware of the fact that those reminders will be there always, and that, as much as this is what I love to do right now, should that change, as Andrew mentioned, or Dr. Campbell mentioned, at times, if I'm out as a parent, my Blackness is always seen first within this space, especially as an educator. My gender is also something that is hyper-focused. I think right now, I know many of you haven't taught yet, but or I shouldn't say many, but some of you haven't. And in preparing for today, one of the first stories that I thought of was being in Teachers College was one of the first times that I had a variety of white people tell me that I was very fortunate to be a Black man. I've lived in this body my whole life, but as we know, the ways in which privilege gets seen, and I'll be very specific. I did the 1-year program. In September, it didn't come up. In October, not in January, but right around time, near the end of the year when people were starting to look at applying for positions, all of a sudden, that hyper visibility of my maleness, my Blackness, and while the guise of it or the way it was presented was new, the idea that I was seen as a threat was not new, but it was very interesting to reflect on how even amongst a room full of people that I've been in school with, I'd done assignments with over the course of a year, no one had ever even rarely mentioned the realities of what it meant to have my Blackness, or again, at the time, I think I was in my small group, one of about 5 men doing the elementary panel, the PJ panel. And that never really came up in much discussion, but when it was time to get hired, it was there. And part of the reason I mentioned that story, of course, is less about the uniqueness of what it means to be a Black male educator. I think most of the people in the space are probably very aware of it. But I always like to share that story and juxtaposition it beside the fact that one of the most traumatic situations that I've ever encountered with police, and I haven't had many, I've been very privileged, happened on my way to a teacher's college event where I was pulled over, I was questioned, I was taken out of the car. They were very, very close to trying to, you know,
And
in terms of
my
the
computer
accusation.
volume, but the sound is low.
Oh.
Okay, settings.
Mike,
So
could you,
gonna...
Mike, could you see if we can turn on your volume a little bit more, if you can?
Sure.
Thank you. I'm gonna ask everybody else to keep their mic off. Thank you. Go
Yeah.
ahead.
Is that better? I don't know. I tried to adjust it. I can try and speak up as well.
Yeah,
those...
maybe put yourself close to the mic or something. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Apologies. But as I was sharing, you know, in terms of that event and in terms of knowing that on my way to, of all things, a workshop for a teacher's college, that was where, you know, I had that interaction with police and law enforcement. And then stepping immediately into the space, I was reminded of the fact that I had that privilege. I think it's one of those things that I always want to ground myself in. And I think it's important for all of us to be aware of, because there are a variety of different ways that we're perceived, a variety of hats that we have to wear and the roles that we do. But of course, our Blackness is always there. And when we talk about identity and we talk about how that connects with students, that authenticity is something that I think is crucial. You know, as Dr. Campbell said, I've known him for a few years. We've been in different spaces at different times. We have, I think, complementary personalities. But one of the things that I really appreciate is that his authenticity and my authenticity may look very different, but at no point does that stray. And I had found, while I was in the classroom for 10 years before I took on the role that I have now, my deepest interactions, my best connections, the places where I found the most joy, unsurprisingly, were coupled with when I was able to be the most authentic. And I want to be very clear, because as I said before, I'm aware of my own privilege. I'm an able-bodied, heterosexual, cisgendered man. The ways in which you choose to present your authenticity may differ, and the time that you may take to explore that or to share that with students may be different. For me, I found that at first, some of the efforts I was putting in to trying to help develop different ideas with staff or with colleagues, there were times where they didn't want to hear it. You know, regardless of where it was coming from, that community, that support was not something that was there. Unsurprisingly, at times, once I put that same effort and energy into my students, and especially into my Black students, but especially bringing in my awareness of culture and my awareness of the realities that they were facing, when our administrator at the time or when a superintendent visited and they had positive things to say, oftentimes those same colleagues would come back to ask questions about what I was doing. And I think I share that story with you for a few reasons. One, it's the reality of what it can mean, because I'll be honest, there are times where, especially early on, you're not always sure if what you're doing is the right thing, or if you're balancing expectations in the way that you should be. There are folks who see you, as I said before, as a threat. That Blackness is a threat, and the idea that you're going to occupy spaces and that you may have potential, especially once you prove yourself, as I know all of you will. That's something else that gets picked up on. But it's really crucial to stay grounded within that. That's something that I continue to do now in the role that I have. Again, I have the opportunity to have some colleagues who I know I can lean on for support, but I also have to continue to navigate what it means to remind, even in a position that's a bit more elevated and has a bit more privilege, I think it's even more important to remind folks of community and remind folks of what's going on in terms of the realities that we face. And I'll end quickly with a last story that kind of touches on, again, that idea of being Black first and an educator second, because I'm also the father of three. And last year, when my second child had what I would describe as a traumatic experience with his junior kindergarten teacher, I had to remind her and remind the space, regardless of position that I hold, my Blackness, my preservation of my child, the priorities that I hold are always going to be paramount and always going to be first and foremost in their education and in my life. So there were times where I did have to go in and address things in a manner that I didn't foresee before the year started. But as we know, that sense of community, no matter how much I love my position, how much I love the work that we do, my dedication first is to my family, to my children, and to their safety. And the fact that I had to sometimes call on work that I've done in workshops and present that verbatim to an educator, knowing that they were, within the union that I work for, that doesn't change the fact that the realities of what my children are going to face are not going to be bound by my position or by my being an educator. They're going to be listed based on the potential that they have and the joy that I know all children should be feeling in school. I'll pause there. I hope I was okay with time, but I appreciate it.
Thank you so much for that, Matthew. Absolutely. Thank you so much. And as you notice, each speaker will speak from different perspective, and then we get into some Q&A, and then you'll get to ask some questions, especially of Matthew, as well as someone who has 3 children in the school system, but also is someone who is in leadership in equity. What does that look like? And I think, of course, you heard that final comment about pulling up on the content to literally say to a teacher, this is what it is about. So that constant teaching, that constant correcting, that constant understanding how you stand in relationship to class and education and school is very important. We're going to move over to you now, Doreen. Doreen, introduce yourself and jump right in, please.
Amazing. Can everyone hear me okay? Thumbs up. Awesome. Thanks so much, Matthew. I really resonated with some of the things you said in regards to the obstacles you faced. And Dr. ABC, it's always a pleasure to be in community with you. You know I love you. Enough love. I want to introduce myself. My name's Doreen Bonsu. I'm a daughter. I'm a rich auntie. And I'm an educator. And I am also a very proud Ghanaian. And I'm a proud Ghanaian to 2 immigrant parents who have taught me the importance of education. I'm in my 9th year of teaching. I teach in the Halton Catholic District School Board. And I'm really proud to say I am the creator of a Black Canadian history course that I created about 4 years ago. And it's been a blessing to see its growth over the past 4 years, which I'm excited to share a bit about today. I'm also a grad student. I'm currently completing my last semester here at OISE, and God willing, next year I'll be graduating with a specialization in educational policy. So this grad journey has been transformational for me. Dr. ABC, you were a key pillar for me. Dr. Day, Dr. Ann Lopez, in my educational journey. I'm also a course writer, facilitator. I wear many hats, but when I'm thinking about my teaching practice, I really take pride in the fact that I use an anti-racist framework. And I do that while intentionally utilizing culturally relevant and responsive pedagogy. And the reason why I do it is because I know it has a positive impact on all students, but specifically our Black and racialized students. And I know if I had the privilege or, to have that as a student myself, my educational experience K-12 would have been that much better. So looking at the topics today, in terms of Black students mattering, in terms of identity, affirmation, and love, I'm going to be sharing it from the position as a teacher and a Black student union advisor. Now, I shared with you, I teach a Black history course, and the course, to give you some context, it focuses on the experiences of Black Canadians. So we look at great African civilizations. I teach my students about or I challenge them to debunk myths about the continent of Africa. We look at debunking myths in regards to people of African descent. We learn about the transatlantic slave trade, as well as contemporary issues that Black Canadians face today. And when I look at identity and how a course like that has shaped the identity of my Black students, it's really important to realize how integral identity formation is in high school. Because in high school, these students, they want to be great. They want to be great students. They want to be good athletes. They want to be good friends. And then on top of that, especially my students who are in predominantly white spaces, they're trying to navigate what being Black means to them. So I've seen that creating a course like this and providing a course like this for Black students, and again, predominantly white spaces, and having a Black teacher who has lived experience, they have told me that they feel safe when it comes to having conversations, navigating it in regards about race, or talking about some of their lived experience too. One example we did is a family tree assignment. And my students told me, Miss Bonsu, I didn't realize my great great uncle was a chief. And I said, yes, you come from a lineage of loyalty, right? But where are we really, in terms of assessments, giving students an opportunity to learn about their histories and learn about their culture? They shared with me, like, the course was empowering, and I learned how courageous my ancestors were. That is a key example of how a course like that can positively impact a Black student's identity. Another way too, it does in terms of being a BSU leader. So BSU, again, is Black Student Unions, and it's an affinity space. And I've seen that space turn into a center of belonging for Black students. Every Thursday, we have our first meeting on Thursday tomorrow. The students come together into room 217 and they can be themselves. A lot of these students, they're, again, predominantly white spaces. They're one-ofs in their class, but when they gather together, they feel at home. It's like a home place for them. And one of the neat stories I could share with you, as students said it was okay, was there's a biracial student, and she came into the BSU because she's like, I want to have more Black friends. And how she took care of her hair, she was straightening it a lot, right? She didn't love the kink in her hair. And through the connection she made with the other Black students in our BSU, in September, she came to school with nice long box braids with the like boohoo twit, like the little boohoo with the, I was like, yes, my girl, right? Look at that. Another great example, right, of positive identity formation for Black students. So again, the intentionality behind creating a Black focused course for me and creating affinity space for Black students, I've seen in my experience helps create positive identity for Black students. When it comes to affirmation, I think it's important that we affirm Black students how they see themselves, right? Because a lot of times teachers look at Black students from a deficit lens. And sometimes I catch myself doing it too. Like, why are you forgetting your laptop again today? You're always forgetting something. You're not organized. Why? But then I caught myself. I was like, you know what? I'm going to give them an opportunity to ask what their strengths are. What are your strengths? One of them said, Ms. Bontu, I'm really good at collaborating with my peers. And that's a great way for me to learn. I said, bet, no problem. When I give you work, like a work period, make sure you're focused on that task. You could do it with your friends, and that's fine. Today, they're loud, they're laughing, but they're doing their work, right? So I'm affirming how they see themselves. He says he's a good collaborator. You give them space to do that and to show that. That's how they're successful. Another way too, we could affirm Black students is by also affirming their lived experience. I think that's so key. This was a huge point for me. One of my Black students did a research project looking at anti-Black racism within Canada, and they focused on housing. They want to be a real estate agent. And their research showed, obviously, in terms of when it comes to purchasing homes, some Black families experience either not having an opportunity to buy it, or they might have to put their homes at a lower price. And later on through the research, through the presentation, my student came up to me and said, Miss Bonsu, this actually happened to my family. And she said, I thought it was just like a one-time thing. I felt isolated in this. But through this research, I realized it's not just a one-time thing, it's a system thing. So by having that activity and that assignment, it affirmed her experience, and she feels a lot more empowered as she actually wants to pursue a real estate herself. And she now has the tools to kind of be a change maker in that regard. And then lastly, when we're looking at loving Black students, I think, I was thinking about this question, Dr. ABC, and I thought to myself, why does it seem to be a radical act to love Black children in these spaces? It's like, why? Like, why? Like, it's so hard sometimes to get programs running, to do initiatives, to get funding for things. It's so hard. Like, when I look at my Black students, they're funny, they're wise, they're curious, they're witty, they're loving. It's so easy to love our Black students. So I think it's important as educators, we continue to tap in and lean into supporting our Black students, because these spaces are not neutral at all. So we need to champion them, because if we don't, I don't know who else will.
But before you go, I just want to emphasize something. Thank you so much, Doreen. And I hope everybody, because remember, my students are in the space. I want to make sure my students understand. Last night we had an event. I was sharing it with Matthew and Shalita before you came on. Last night we had an event at the Center for Black Studies in Education at OISE. And it was a monthly research event. And we had 19 Black students, 2 of which are present here as well in that space. And so we had myself, Professor, and Professor Lopez as a facilitator, and 19 Black students who are doing research. And before I left, one person pulled me aside and with such gratitude of finding said, I've never in my entire education life been in a space with so many Black people. And she said, thank you so much, only to find out she wasn't even OISE student. She's from a University of Toronto, but a different campus. And then I reached home and I got the most emotional email that brought me to tears last night from another student that says, I was this person, whatever. And she said, thank you. She said, I walked into the space and it's just hearing the laughter and seeing the Black woman in the space and eating and talking about research. She said, you don't get it, Dr. Campbell, what you did for me just in that 1.5 hours. So when we talk about the way you show up in this classroom, that's powerful. And I want my students to hear you when you talk about creating the course, because we have similar stories. This course here that we are doing was created for Black students. And so when I say to students, and I'm saying to community, you're hearing me, I'm saying to community, I want to bring, I'm gonna remove the pin from you, remove the pin from myself. So we just bring community on the screen for 2 minutes before we go on to you, Trina. I want community to understand when I keep saying this like a broken record, and I'm gonna continue saying it. There are many ways for you to disrupt anti-Blackness. It doesn't always mean I'm going to go outside and march. It doesn't always mean I'm going to raise. Some of you will never to take a march. That's not your thing. But look at the power that Matthew works with. I remember meeting Matthew on a board, but I remember sitting in a workshop that Matthew was conducting. I want you to understand. And I'm sitting there drinking. And then Doreen was a student in my class, and I'm listening to Doreen talking about her students. And there's something else I want to bring forward at this time for you to understand why my emotions are so high when it comes to certain things. Doreen, I remember this year, and I'm going to pin you back for this because I have to do this. This year, when I said to you, when you heard about, because you didn't know about it, you just heard about the DR.ABC, that's my brand, the Black Excellence Brunch. And you say to me, Dr. Campbell, I must bring some of my Black students. And that was big. I will never forget the look on their eyes when they came into that ballroom and see just Black excellence in every single way, in every single identity, right? And that's powerful. That is powerful. I'm going to break my own rule because that's how I do it sometimes. I want you to take, I'm timing you during 60 seconds, that's 1 minute, to say something about what it meant when to bring Black students in a space where there was 200 other Black people celebrating Black excellence. What did that mean for them?
Yes, and I'm so glad you brought that up because I was going to talk about that later. And honestly, Dr. ABC, when I think about community, I think about you, for real. And I was talking to one of my friends and I was like, I think the C in Dr. ABC stands for community because of how you show up for us, for real. And my students on the ride there, they were like, Miss Bonsu, I've never been in a space with that many Black people before. Because remember, I'm talking we're students from Halton, right? And they felt so empowered and they were so full. They were living their best lives. They were smiling, getting pictures with everybody out of there, like on TikTok. They were just thriving in that space because they were able to connect with so many professionals. They were confident asking questions. It was amazing. And also, again, you creating space too. I'm even thinking, God willing, next year, bringing some students to the 3rd-year anniversary of the Center of Black Studies too. So it's important that our students see spaces like that as well.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. All right. So we're going to bring someone else in, and that is going to be Trina. And Trina, you were a part of the panel last year. I came back for you again. I came back for Matthew. I came back for Doreen because of what I got and what I needed. I just want to also give a shout out to one of our panelists from last year who I didn't use her this year because I need her for something else. And that's Kimberly Cato. And Kimberly Cato, I just want to say something to you. The ways in which you pour into people. And I'm going to pull you on. I know I'm putting you on the spot, but I'm going to pull you on later on just to say some parting words. So yes, I know they didn't plan this, but I follow my energy and said I need to do that. So later on, Kimberly, I'm going to give you 2 minutes just to give us some closing remarks. Like, come on, closing remarks, right? But the way you pour life into me, the way you energize me, the way you pour into me every time you open your mouth, that's what we get, and we need that. So Trina, over to you. Talk to us about who you are, what you do, and what does that have to do with loving and affirming Black students. That you're also an amazing mom, because that's where we need to talk about a start as well. Over to you.
All right, good evening, everyone. And Dr. ABC, thank you so much for inviting me to talk about caring for our Black students. Matthew and Doreen, so much of what you said resonated with me. And I sat here not only admiring what you're saying or appreciating what you're saying, but your ability to just speak. I have a lot of notes here. I can't do it, but that was awesome. So my name is Trina Denny. I'm in my 28th year as an educator. 26 of those years were in the classroom. I've taught pretty well everything between grade 1 to grade 8. The last 2 years, I've been in the role of a social emotional learning resource teacher, which is in essence helping educators build capacity to support students with social and emotional learning needs and self-regulation. But today, what I'm going to share with you is simply my heart's work. All right, after all this time in education, what I know for sure is the crucial role that we as Black educators play in nurturing success, excellence, and well-being in the lives of our Black students. And I think there are 2 fundamental ways that we do this. Firstly, we must educators really see our Black students. We help them to see themselves. They see their power, their magic, their ability to become anything they want to be. We complement their hairstyles with their clothing and their beautiful ebony skin. We make sure they're represented in the curriculum. We teach them about their rich history. We flood them with examples of Black excellence. We celebrate their loud expressions of joy. We foster confidence in their unique and creative ways of knowing. And we light up and smile when they walk into our classrooms. We create safe spaces for them. We make sure that their caregivers get those sunshine calls, and we treat them as valuable partners in their children's educational journey and success. In order for Black children to see themselves, we need to be their champions. As the late, great Rita Pearson says, every child, and I'll add every Black child, deserves a champion. An adult who will never give up on them, who understands the power of connection and insists that they become the best that they can possibly be. To close, I'm going to share one more story with you, but this time it's about the power of helping students to see the beauty and power within themselves. So 4 years ago, I had a beautiful Black girl in my grade 6 class, and she came in with one of those really thick OSR files. You know those files where there's never anything positive in there, right? And she had a lot of trauma, both from her life experiences and in school. She didn't like school. She didn't feel safe. She didn't feel like she belonged. She'd ask to go to the washroom several times a day and stay there for extended periods. When she first came into my class, I made a decision to just love her. Love her, love her, love her as hard as I possibly could. That was it. Eventually, things slowly started to change. Like my friend from Jamaica, she and I also bonded over food, kind of. So you know those big red boxes of chocolates with the Kit Kat bars, the Smarties, the Aeros, the Toffee Crisp, like the Halloween-sized chocolates? I used to buy them for my students and keep them in my desk. And I'd give it to them for random reasons. Well, one day, this beautiful girl decided to borrow my whole box of chocolate from my desk. There were 1,001 ways that I could have handled this. Oh, sorry. She borrowed my chocolate, but then she proceeded to leave a Kit Kat bar on my desk every day for about a week because she knew that Kit Kat was my favorite. So there were 1,001 ways I could have handled this, right? But what I decided to do was to give her what she needed. What she needed was to see herself differently, positively. So I'd go into my classroom, see that Kit Kat bar, and I'd be like, oh my gosh, honey, thank you. Is this for me? You are so thoughtful. That is really kind of you. I appreciate you so much. Her face would light up and she was proud. This last August, I got a letter from her. For me, it really exemplifies the difference we can make in our Black students' lives when we see them, affirm them, stand as their champions, but most importantly, love them and help them see the beauty and power within themselves. Okay, I'm gonna try not to cry. Hello, Miss Denny. I just wanted to reach out to you because you were the first teacher to make me feel like I was on top of the world. And if I could do it, it would happen. You made the light shine in me that I didn't know I need. You showed me love and you cared for me like I was a child of your own. You made me feel safe whenever I was with you, and you will always be my teacher and my friend. Thank you for showing me that I can be someone who can achieve, thrive, and honor her goals to get to where she needs to be. I say it's in the reach of my arms, the span of my hips, the stride of my step, the curl of my lips. We are women phenomenally. Phenomenal woman. That's me. For this beautiful young lady to know that she is indeed phenomenal and not her trauma and certainly not her mistakes is what it means to care for our Black children. As I'm nearing the end of my educational career, I'm blessed to have called this my life's work. And as I'm talking to all of you, I'm so encouraged to know that you too will help our Black students see themselves as you see them. When we do this, we create the conditions that allow for our Black children to become what I've heard you, Dr. ABC, say, our ancestors' wildest, wildest dreams.
Thank you so much. And you know, as you're speaking, and I'm a storyteller, I know many of us, Shalita, who's coming next, is also a storyteller. You realize how much we need to capture these stories. I'm going to be very frank with you. Sometimes as a professor, I think, ugh, what else can people research? What else can people write? And every single day I get up, I realize there are so many untold stories. There are so many untold stories. You know, Matthew, you have 3 little ones. And I can tell you right now how for me, I was explaining to my class that when by the time I was 11-year-old in Jamaica, I have read every single fairy tale you knew. I have read 54, I think it was 48 or 54 of Nancy Drew and All the Boys and Bob's the Twins. I did Tom Sawyer, Huckleberry Finn. I was fed all these stories as a Black little boy in Jamaica. These are our stories. Until all of a sudden there was a shift because persons like Doreen, persons like myself, teachers like Matthew, teachers like you were curating the stories. And all of a sudden we got stories like My Father the Boy Was Afraid, Peter of Mount Ephraim Estate, The Year in San Fernando, A Cow Called Boy, The Woman of Bepatate, stories that young warriors, stories that had us in it. And so I'm listening to you. I know my stories. I've listened to Doreen tell stories. And I'm still thinking, my mind is always going, how do we capture some of these stories so we can make sure we share them and we use them and we tell our stories. So thank you for doing that. Thank you for telling stories. Thank you for the way in which you have sent it. I heard when you said, I made the decision to love her. I want to underline that. That's what for me is called intentionality. Because we know some of our children are challenging. We know that happens. That's not a joke. But you made an intention, a decision to love her. And love could do a lot that curriculum cannot do. I could tell you that. And I know you know that, being in the classroom for 28 years. So thank you so much. We are going to bring Shalita in the space. Shalita, you are in the space. Talk to us. Tell us what it means for Black students to matter, to be loved, to affirm, to be seen. Talk to us.
Thank you so very much, Dr. Campbell, for not only hosting this community class, but to invite me here to have an opportunity to speak with everybody. I'm going to echo the words that, Doreen and Matthew have said already, but what powerful, powerful educators that they are in their own right. Halton, Doreen and I know each other quite well, our co-termers for our rival girl, you and I, right? But I had to hold back those tears, Trina. I'm like, I put mascara on the bottom lashes. I could not cry. So, but inside, I just love all of that, what you said. So I don't know how I follow that, but I'm going to do my best to try. My name is Shalita Walker, and I always say I have the honor and the privilege to serve in the capacity as system principal with the Halton District School Board in the Department of Human Rights, Equity, and Inclusive Education. And so I usually just say all the isms and the phobias fall in my lap, and I kind of navigate it that way. But it really is an opportunity to put into practice what we talk about so often about systemic oppression and the ways in which we have to shift and disrupt those systems. And so I do have a privilege, but I also have a responsibility, a moral and a professional responsibility to do that. I also am able to look at the experiences of Black youth, not just from the classroom, not just from the within the school context, but to see how it reproduces itself around the system. And so I'm coming to you today to talk about and to touch on aspects that we may not always think about as educators. And I know that there are many educators here from Halton as well. So shout out to my peeps and thank you for supporting. But I also know that there are ways in which that we can examine, for those of you who are in Dr. ABC's class, how you examine the work that you are doing intimately for yourself to be in response to Black students and their mattering. So the first thing I want to talk about is identity. And so I want us to first think about the fact that as Black educators, it is important first to go on that, as Yolanda Sealy-Ruiz says, that archaeology of self, to really look into your own personal narratives and identify what your individual story is in relation to your Blackness. Because each and every one of us have our stories. Our Blackness is not a monolith, although we do have common experiences. And so the identity that you have will allow you to see where you fit within a larger context of Black identity. And so I would ask you to challenge yourself to look through your teaching practice, your pedagogical practices, to ask yourself, where and how am I bringing the depth and breadth of Black identity into my practice, into my program? So where are Black Muslims showing up in your space? That you are creating lessons, you are bringing in text, you are bringing in and highlighting contributors who are Black and Muslim. Where are Black and queer students, that intersectionality of identity, those layers that make us who we are? Where and how are you bringing that into space? Black, Indigenous, Afro-Indigenous youth. So we aren't just a monolith of those who are melanated and that is it. We have biracial students, some who present as white. We talked about, Doreen highlighted that one of the students who's trying to find, and we know some of the challenges when you have, when you are biracial in your identity, how sometimes you don't feel as if you belong in either. So intersectionality is really critical for us to think about, because for many, you can be in one group and experience anti-Black racism, in the other group and experience Islamophobia or, you know, anti-2S LGBTQ hate, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So they need to be able to know that in the classes that you have, along with those high expectations that you have for them, that you're also showing the diversity that exists within us. Secondly, I want to talk about how we affirm those identity. We know that we are often hearing the data of how Black students perform in relation to white students. We often think about what is for Black folks, what Black people do, and that's white people's things. And I want to challenge that for us. I want us to be able to provide opportunities for Black youth so that they understand that they belong everywhere, that they play not the white person's sport, they just play hockey, that they listen to whatever, not white people's music, they listen to rock, punk, country, whatever it is that we want. Okay, I know we're going to all go down that bait about country, so let me pull that one back. We know the history, but the idea that we can occupy all these spaces. Doreen talked a bit about that in Halton. Our spaces are predominantly white spaces. 82% of the teachers in front of students are white, compared to 42% in elementary and 57% in secondary that are non-white. And so it is important for us to recognize that there are Black students who are going to be navigating white space their whole entire life. And so, yes, they may engage with activities and opportunities that we may see, hey, well, that's not Black. Everything is Black. There's no place where we can't be. We've shown that. So how are we bringing those opportunities for our youth? How are we being able to ensure that when they have to navigate into other spaces, that they can be proud that, yes, this is how I express my Blackness. This is where my Blackness also exists. The other part in affirming identity is to ensure that we also are teaching their history. You do not need to be a history teacher to teach history, but our students need to know their place of origin. They need to know, as we've heard before, kings and queens and chiefs. They need to know that we are the scientists, the archaeologists, that we were matriarchal in societies, that we were healers, all of those pieces, resistors, activists, going back from the dawn of time, not just in the 60s, not just during the civil rights movement. So how do you bring those stories, those experiences, that knowledge into your classrooms as well? Your identity matters, but your ability to interrogate the way in which identity informs your instruction also matters. And last but not least, love. No better example is what Trina talked about, and the stories and the feedback that she got from the two students, that she received from the two students on what love means and how love plays a critical role in shaping students' lives. And students, we know, I want you to think of yourself as gardeners. And I want you to think about yourself as gardeners because gardeners cultivate. And you are not necessarily inheriting seeds. If you're starting as a grade 6 or grade 12 teacher, or if you're an administrator and you're inheriting a school, they're not seeds that you now have. They're actually plants. And some of them have been root bound because of the ways in which they've been stifled by a system. And so you have to be able to kind of break up those roots and repot them in a place where they can flourish and grow. You have to know the ones who look that they have, you know, the leaves are kind of flopping over. You're seeing some things that are just, how do you fertilize that? How do you give nutrients? How do you have to, maybe you have to take off a little bit of that which isn't growing, so to promote new growth. Gardeners are attentive to that which they are cultivating. Are the love that we have for students and the love that we give does not fall under 300 minutes of instruction time. I know that might be a hard thing to say, and Matthew, I know you're an EPCO, so don't come after me for this one. But the best teachers that I see are the ones that know that students are not between our work hours. We give so much all of us, in our commitment, we give. We give with love, we give with grace. And so how do we nurture? How do we do so in a way that allows students to feel that you absolutely 100% love them? It is the time that you take to them, with them, the conversations in the halls, the before school, the after school. It's the walk in the communities, be in community. And most importantly, it is the love that you also show to their family, free of the judgment. We have a lot of unlearning for ourselves. We have a lot of messages that we were taught that even without knowing it, we can sometimes perpetuate that as well. You can experience oppression and also perpetuate it. And so part of the work that we have to do is to do some unlearning in order to give our youth opportunities for them to define who they are, not from the stereotypes that often are layered onto us, but for them to be able to chart their own path. And so I share that with you because I do believe that these are opportunities that you have. We know within education, there's a gross underrepresentation of Black educators in school spaces. And so you are an invaluable asset to any school that you go into, but most importantly, to every single child that you stand in front of. Because the Black student matters, and the other students who need to see you and to see how you teach matters as well. So I just wanted to leave you with those few words. Thank you.
Wow. Thank you so much, Shalita. Thank you so much. And something that you said has not left me yet, and that is they belong everywhere. That is absolutely powerful. That is absolutely powerful. I want us to take a minute to understand what belonging looks like. So yesterday, Monday, at the Truth and Reconciliation event at University of Toronto, I was sitting right in this chair and I was listening to the event and listening, and someone, I think is an acting dean for University of Toronto, Scarborough. I think it was an acting dean. He said something that when I said dropped in me, it dropped in me so hard. And he says, because I've been saying this for so long, but sometimes when somebody frame it away, you just feel, he kept saying, I hope we continue working at including, so one day the people will finally find a sense of belonging. And I keep on saying that to people, belonging is deeper. It's deeper than just being included. Inclusion is one thing, but for persons to feel a sense of belonging, it's deeper than that. And so I thank you for when you said they belong everywhere. And I've been using a lot of my summer conversations about that because with so many of our Black students, Black teachers, Black parents, Black families do not know how deserving they are. I want that to sink with us a little bit. So many of our Black parents, our Black students, our Black teachers do not know that they are deserving. And that is important to understand. And then something else I want to share with you all. And let me remove this pin. So remember the story I was telling you that happened last night. Something you said, Shalita, about identity. So Matthew started with, I hope everybody saw what happened. I want to be very clear, everybody saw what happened. Matthew started with spending maybe half of his time talking about identity, who he is, and how he came to this work. For my students who are listening, I want you to have that moment. I can have it for you, but I want you to have it in a minute. So Matthew started with that. I'm going to pin myself because I'm going to go into this and I want you to understand. So Matthew started with that. Last night in an event, Professor Ann Lopez spent a lot of time talking about positionality. All of you are writing research have to understand positionality is who you are going to the research. So are you a Black person writing about a Black experience? Just like, we have a problem with so many people writing our stories, right? Who are you? How are you coming to the work? So Matthew started by having a clear conversation with you about who is identity. So did Doreen, so did Trina, so did Shalita. How are you coming to this work? And then you said something, Shalita, I'm going to quote you. I don't think I'm going to quote you as properly, but the ways in which you are able to seek your, the ways in which your identity informs your pedagogy. The ways in which your identity informs your pedagogy. So when many of you are over it, like, oh my God, are we going to talk about Black again? Some people struggle. So last night when I got the letter, the young lady used a word in it that I've never used before. Anybody here can pronounce that word? Anybody can turn on your mic and pronounce it for me properly? Who know that word well?
Salve.
Salve, right? So she said in her email to me, I want to thank you for the meeting tonight. It was a salve to my soul. So I read it, you know, and more of it was there. And she said, a salve to my soul. I want you to understand where I'm going with this. And I am so excited to be at OISE with other people who are not confused about who they are. Then what I did, I went on and I said, oh, let me look at the meaning of the word. I want you to listen to me carefully. So I look at the meaning. It says, salve, an ointment used to promote healing or as protection. I want you to listen to that. The next verb, that's a noun. The verb is soothe wounded pride or someone's wounded pride. The next one is apply to salve it. They salved my cuts and stopped the bleeding. I want you to listen to me. What are the synonyms to the word salve? Ointment, cream, balm, pomade. I want you to understand what that meant. It was powerful or choice a word. So I want you to understand, as educators, when we go into the classroom, we are bringing, as Shalita said, we are bringing so much of ourselves. For me, my joy that I have, that natural joy, ask any school I've been in TDSB. They will tell you, this is Mr. Campbell. Some of you just got to know Mr. Campbell. Oh, by the way, I am Mr. Campbell. Some of you just get to know Mr. Campbell. The kids in the Bahamas will tell you, this is me. So I want you to understand who you are, the love you have, the care you have. When you bring that into the classroom, as Shalita said, it's good for all our students. And I want us to make sure we understand that. Now, I know we're good for time, so I'm going to follow my spirit. You know, I follow my energy. And I'm going to, before I ask the panel questions, I want to take 2 questions or 2 comments from the audience. And I see you, Claudette Rutherford. I see you just coming into the space. I love you, Black woman. I love you, Educator. Whenever I see you, my heart swells. You're a beautiful person, beautiful being. And we have been in so many spaces like this before. So welcome, Claudette. Enough respect is due. 2 persons who are not on the panel, who want to speak? You have 1 minute each to either ask a question or make a comment. Who want to pour into community? Alera, turn your mic. If you want to turn on the camera, go ahead, Alera. That's one of my amazing students. Go ahead, Alera.
Oh no. Okay, sorry. I wanted to hide my face because I'm really reactive whenever I'm listening to all this stuff. So I'm here, I'm listening. I want my reactions to be here. But I actually had a question for Doreen.
Yes.
I loved hearing you talk about your class and how you created a Black History course. And it's something that has probably come up in nearly every course I've taken thus far at OISE, but how the people that need to be in the classroom to learn about Black history, to learn about Black joy and about like taking care, like what not even the difference, but learning about what it means to be a Black body in dominant space, in, you know, spaces where the white body is the dominant body. Like how did you decide that, like how, I guess, when you were designing the course itself, how did you decide who should be the audience? How did you navigate being like, this should be a course that is for Black bodies versus I think a lot of people think that our responsibility is also to educate others. So how did you make that decision to be like, you know what, this course will be for our people, for Black bodies, not for those who need to understand it? I'd love to hear the thoughts. It doesn't have to be now, but yeah.
Yeah, go ahead, Doreen, please.
Thanks so much for your question. So in terms of creation of the course, and I made it as Afrocentric as possible. And I had to be mindful of my audience because I do work in Halton, right? So it's predominantly white. However, my school is diverse. There are a lot of South Asians and Black students. So I was aware of my audience. So I knew that in the first cohort, there was definitely more Black and racialized students. However, now, again, we're working with high school students. I have non-Black students that have also joined and are open to learning from a very Afrocentric perspective, if that makes sense. So because of, I mean, it'd be ideal. Like sometimes I'm like, I wish I could go to Ghana and teach, you know what I mean? But I gotta work. I mean, I've been there, but I wish I could, anyway, that's another story. But we gotta work with the systems we have. And I'll talk a bit about it later, but every year I'm like, I could make this course so much better. And I want to say, when I first started this course, I wasn't in community. I was very isolated. And I'll talk about that later. And because of that, the way the course was created, I look at it now and then, it's like a 180 in terms of the content that's there. So to answer your question, the course isn't just for Black students because of the student body in my school. However, I am really intentional about it being like it centers Black voices and it's for Black folks.
Thank you for that, Doreen. And that's something you said, Doreen, that I want to point out and underline is yes. So we're not going to all be lucky or blessed or to have a course where it's only just for Black students. I mean, this course is that, but I also see in the future how I may expand it but however, it is where you center Black voices. So I can tell you this course that is in this class and my class that I teach, a same course that for many other people teach that same course, maybe the only room that the students get to hear the names Yolanda Seeley Ruiz, Goli Mohammed, they hear Bettina Love, they hear Glory Ladson Billings, they hear me talking about Toni Morrison. So a part of the course that Doreen is talking about and part of this course is the ways in which we expose Black students and all students to Black literature, Black knowledge. So you may create a course, Alero, that is Black centered, but the students don't have to be Black. Because what we are getting, for instance, when I went to OISE and I did 6 courses in my PhD, I don't remember 3 or 4 Black authors or researchers that we studied. I do not. So remember, all my professors except one was white. So that is what the people are reproducing as what her name is says. We are white people taught by white people taught by white people taught by white people. Robin DiAngelo, right? So you have to understand, what are you producing? What are you reproducing? So another lesson in this conversation is not just for Black teachers, but for all teachers in the space. What are you producing? What are you reproducing? What are the stories you're telling? What is the content you're using? I always use this old story that I use a lot to say, I remember at school where the students were doing French and the French teacher talked about France and these countries, that's European French speaking country. And when the French teacher was absent, the substitute teacher came in and exposed the children to all these African countries that speak French. Because all they know was French, was European French country. So this is where teachers have the power to expose our students to what is other. And we have to stop. We have to get to the place where I hope years from now, we won't be using the othered, because we are othered by. Just like how we are learning how not to use minority, we are actually minoritized. So there's so much learning in that. All right. So thank you for that question, Alera. And I know you got it. Augustina, last question from you, then we jump right into the panel. Go ahead, Augustina. Welcome to the space.
Thank you so much. I actually don't, well, I kind of have a question, but more so a comment.
Yes.
I was actually brought to tears, sorry. Getting very emotional because, well, Doreen's my cousin, so I'm very proud of her. But just hearing this amazing conversation, I just feel like it's healed like my inner child. Like I wish I had a Black teacher.
Yeah.
I never had a Black teacher until I went to my second year of university. And that was the first time that I felt that I was seen and I was heard and I was encouraged. And just having this conversation just made me think, where would I be in my life if I had a Black teacher who believed in me when I was young, when I felt that I was not good enough compared to, the other students in the class, et cetera, et cetera. So just thank you so much for holding this space and having these amazing conversations. I actually work in research. I work in research ethics, and we've been talking about how do we address anti-Black racism when it comes to research. So I'm just thinking, in terms of students and our community and making a change, how do you incorporate maybe some community resources that talk about, Black history, but just what's happening in the Black community right now to help these students to enhance this connection to the subject matter that they are learning in school so that they see how it plays out in their day-to-day life? I know that's like a very long-winded question, but
that's powerful, Augustine, and thank you for bringing up, for coming into the space and for pouring, not just drinking up, but for pouring into the space. So I want all my researchers in the space, which is about 14 of you for sure. I want you to listen. I think Nadia and Sarah was at the meeting last night, the research meeting last night. And I hope you understood that question from Augustina. Because Augustina, you give me chills just now when you asked the question, because it connected to last night again. Last night we talked about critical research, and Professor Ann Lopez made it very clear about what critical research does. It goes out. Now you have to remember, one of the big problems we have in university is when Black students go to their predominantly white professors we have in the university. I am only one of. Okay? And you said, I want to do this research. The first response you get is, you're not supposed to do that. Why don't you do whatever you don't do? I could tell you my personal story. I had that example. So I don't have to tell you this is a story. That happened to Andrew Campbell. That happened to me at University of Toronto in 2010, when I went to my then advisor to say what I want to research, and he stopped me and said to me, you are in Canada, why don't you research something in Canada? He's retired and gone. I can say that publicly. And another white professor heard the conversation. That's why we have to understand where your power lies. And he literally heard the conversation, heard my response, because I was very upset. See, I've always been this person. I literally said to that professor, you don't live in Africa, but you research in Africa. See, I've always been this person, right? And so he overheard that, and that's how this particular professor, Jim Ryan, I could use his name, became my supervisor. He pulled me in because he heard the deficit response that I got from a fellow professor. So back to your response, the ways in which we as educators are going to impact the Black students, the Black classroom, is how we bring their stories. It's easy for many of us who are at university to write a research on something. I have been invited to write, and they're writing the same something. And I said, I'm not interested. So I could speak like this, Agostina, because I have been challenged. I remember saying to Dr., I can use that beautiful name again, one of my favorite professor, Professor Joe Flesser. He looked at me and he said, Dr. ABC, how is your publishing going on? You have not done certain things. And I look at him and I said, Professor Flesser, I am going to write books and chapters and research that my people want to read and they're impacting. And I can tell you, this is not a brag, this is not a boast, this is from my heart. I could tell you, look at my list of publications. You go and Google me, go on my resume, go on my University of Toronto website and look at my publication. They are about Blackness and queerness. I am not just researching 2S LGBTQIA+. I want to hear about Black people who are 2S LGBTQ. I want to tell the stories of Black trans people. I want to talk about anti-Black racism. I want to write stories about Black people. I want to talk about cultural relevant and responsive pedagogy. So as student, as a researcher, Augustina, you get to choose the critical research, the critical theories, the critical topics you want to talk about. And if you don't do it, Augustina, and I don't do it, and Doreen don't write it, and Matthew don't write it, and Shalita don't write it, then who are we leaving to write it? If Alera and Sarah and Nadia, if they don't write it, who are we going to leave to write it? What's going to happen is that we continue to have the hunter telling our stories. And then we are upset. Why are Black students and Black parents and Black persons in this light? Because we are not interrupting and disrupting research. Augustine, you better be careful because you charge me up right now. You better be careful. You know when I'm charged up, I'm Doreen. Tell her when I'm charged up, I'm charged up. We got to go into a Q&A at this time. Matthew, we are bringing you into the space for the Q&A at this time. So let me share my screen. And Matthew, I think you are the first question goes to Matthew. I think that's your question, Matthew. Yes. So everybody listen to this question. This is a comment that is from our reading from Bettina Love. And this passage said, this is the very work of challenging whiteness. Funny enough, we segue into this, right? Challenging whiteness in your community. So you can challenge it at school. The work is not a one-time conversation. It is who you must become in and outside of the classroom. So I just talked about challenging whiteness through my research, Augustina. So over to you, Matthew. What does it mean to challenge whiteness? And how can classroom teachers do this? Over to you, Matthew.
So I have to start because the quote you just mentioned, a part of my portfolio, I got to host a racialized members conference.
Wow.
And the title for that quote, the title for that conference this year is Until the Lion Learns to Write. And what I've done is I've brought in a variety of different writers. Yolanda T. Marshall, who wrote Black Cake for Santa, has a variety of different books when we were talking about different themes and the ways our stories need to be written. I wanted to highlight that, but then also throughout that course that that 2-day program that we have, I get to highlight the value of unwritten stories and how much we know there are so many that are out there and how much those have been devalued. So just in terms of the connection, I had to highlight that. But I think when it comes to challenging whiteness, the reality is, and this has been mentioned earlier, we begin as healers. You know, I spent a lot of time as a grade 7-8 teacher. I personality-wise, I'm very introverted. I tend to be more mild-mannered. I'm not a big yeller. And I remember one of the first groups that I had at a school that was one of the first predominantly Black schools that I taught at. I had students who came in and kept saying like, oh, wait till October. You know, we've had teachers who've left, we've had teachers who've been on leave, you know, and it was grade 7, grade 8. And I'm in this, you know, I taught in Durham. This area was quite affluent. This is a French immersion school. I heard, you know, Doreen mention and others mention the idea of identity and what that means for students to sometimes struggle with, or just explore, I should say better. It was shocking to me because, you know, within a few weeks, I remember coming home and just reflecting on the fact that this was one of the most bright, most potential, like so much was in that room and in those students, but what they carried was what they had been told for so many years. Right? They had been told that they were disruptive. They'd been told that they were loud. They'd been told that, you know, because of the way they like to dress or the way they like to listen to music, that was an issue. And the reality for me was I just let them lead, but also as we talk about affirming identity and what that love looks like, that music, those themes, when we talk about culturally relevant and responsive pedagogy, letting them guide so much of that learning was so powerful. Because, you know, throughout the years, when they started to see and truly believe that they were safe in the space and truly believe that I was looking out for them, not just in the space, but as a coach outside or as a student lead, you know, leading student groups, or, you know, the odd time where, you know, I can remember colleagues of mine saying, oh, I hate when I bump into students in the community, you know, it's always so awkward. And that couldn't resonate further with me. You know, I loved, and I still get the opportunity now to bump into students. We were telling some stories earlier, and I have to highlight this one because, again, I'll try my best to stay calm and not get too emotional as well. But, you know, I left the classroom 6 years ago. And as I said, I live in a community where I get to bump into students periodically. But a few months ago, I got a phone call at my work phone number at ETFO. And it was, you know, someone asking for Mr. Sinclair, which I thought was an odd way to start a conversation because I hadn't heard that in a long time. But it was a former student who was planning a reunion of their grade 8 class. And myself and another colleague, I was fortunate to work with another amazing Black educator. You know, we had them for most of their time in grade 7 and grade 8. They really wanted to invite us to this reunion. And so I ended up going on a weekend. to this event where they had, put together 30 or 35 of them out of 50, which I found amazing because, they're now in third year university, but they'd held this event. They invited us. They kept reflecting on stories. I think for me, when I think back to what guided me as I taught them and while I was in the classroom and continues to guide me now, is the reality that, the love that these students need to feel isn't just a radical step, as was said earlier. It isn't just to affirm them in the space, but it goes so much deeper because we know that they have so much untapped potential, and that the healing comes from them really truly understanding that someone cares about them, cares about their family, and sees them for who they are. I loved earlier when it was mentioned the idea that we're not a monolith, because obviously with so many different students and so many different interactions, that constant reflection is needed for us, right? We have our own biases that we will bring into these conversations in ways that will affect our reality. But, what I think transpires when we're able to really set our students and their well-being first is the joy that's needed for them to feel as though school and class and the classroom is a place that they want to be. As I said, sadly, I've had the reality of that. I talked about it as an educator, but I know that happens as young as 4. I've heard as I said, my own child, other children in community start to talk about learning in this way that gets disrupted and in ways that I know is informed by the educators that they've been in front of. And when it comes to challenging that whiteness and affirming that and presenting that love, part of the balance is sometimes being very conscious about how you ignore and disrupt messaging that's around you. So I can tell you that in the 10 years I was in the classroom, I very rarely ever opened an OSR. Not because I didn't think there was anything valuable in there. If there's something I needed to know, then I knew it was there. But the way I always would phrase it if I was asked, and I'd reflect on, is, being at the schools I was at, the only Black man, the same way I have no idea what the students saw or responded to with mostly white female teachers. Their perceptions of this student can do nothing but harm me, right? Like I didn't see the connection. I didn't see the purpose. It was something that for me very much, and even sitting in classroom placement conversations, there were times where I would just have to either hypercorrect or in my head, when I was a younger teacher, just know what I'm hearing and how these students are being described in no way reflects not only what their reality is, but what my reality with them is. And I think that's such a key part of this conversation and a key part of what it means to disrupt and challenge whiteness, is to ensure that our students know this. Because, working in the position that I do now, and as we know, it's very common right now, there's this big conversation about the dearth of Black teachers. I always like to reflect back on 2 parts of what that reality means. When we're not challenging the space that these students went through when they were young people, if they somehow manage to persevere through that and then get to a place where they can get into an undergrad degree and then have a choice of what profession they want to choose, why would they return to a place of trauma? I've never, and no one, maybe someone will be able to answer this question for me, but I genuinely cannot even present the option when we know that day by day there's these events happening and intentionality sometimes in ways that we know we need to disrupt, that really create school as a dangerous or an unsafe place. So if you're managing to get to the place where you can choose, to return there is counterintuitive. So for me, the recruitment of Black educators starts with when we have them come into our classrooms, and even before, at 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 years old. When they can feel safety in that classroom, then the option, the idea already starts to flip on its head. Now it's a possibility. And if it's not, and once it becomes a possibility, then it becomes an option. And then if they can have ourselves and others as role models, it's really important to have that connection back. But that day-to-day interaction that you have with your students is the disruption that's needed to ultimately lead to more recruitment. And the second piece, and I'll end with this, obviously, again, in part with the position that I hold now, but just in terms of the realities we face, is retention. We can't just have this idea that we're going to spend a lot of time to try and go out and get people to come into unsafe environments at times. And then one, act surprised that it's unsafe, and two, act surprised that with options, they're choosing other things. So, you know, that can look very different. For me, it looks like finding community outside of my classroom and joining the Durham Black Educators Network. I know there's some Halton folks here, Eleanor McIntosh, a dear friend of mine, an amazing educator who's now a superintendent in that region. She, at the time, was one of the leaders of that group, and I found so much safety and so much community in that space that kept me going and kept me reaffirmed, which, again, helped me reaffirm and bring joy to my students, right? We have to have that for ourselves. We have to have that joy. We have to have that community. And finding spaces, creating spaces like that is something that I'm excited to be able to do now with Black leadership programs for educators at FO that look at pathways beyond the union, but just in terms of education as a whole. So I can see I may have touched on someone else's time, but I just wanted to make sure that I highlighted some of those pieces. And, you know, again, it's really important to reflect on the choices that we're making day to day, because they have such huge ramifications for down the line.
Thank you so much. No, thank you so much for that. And I want to underline something, Matthew, that you said. You talk about the value of your own growth, but for community. And I remember, Doreen, you said when you started the course, you never had community. I know we could have an entire discussion about that, because there's power in how you show up in community, how you pour in community, but our community supports you. And I can tell you, it is important. So we have to know how we're doing, and we are giving the tools to our young people and to our future teachers and to the ones who are researching and writing as well. So Trina, it's over to your question. And this comment, this other quote again comes from Bettina Love, page 8990. And he said, there is no one way to be an abolitionist teacher. When you listen to that, Matthew just talk about the ways in which to disrupt whiteness, and whiteness don't mean white people. I know we're bigger than that. We're much more than that. It's whiteness, what it looks like, right? And how it shows up, And we talk about being an abolitionist teacher. And it says there's no one way. Some teachers will create a home place for their students while teaching them with the highest expectations. Some will protest in the streets. Some will fight standardized testing. Some will restore justice in their classroom. Some will create justice-centered curriculum and teaching approaches. So, Trina, what does it mean to hold high expectations for Black children? Over to you.
Okay, I'm going to wear two hats as I answer this question, one as an educator, the other as a mom. As an educator, for me, it means that we deeply, deeply believe in the capacity for our Black kids to do well. We reject the deficit language often used to talk about them, and we believe deeply that they can be anything they want. And when we believe that, I think there are three things we need to do as an educator to support it. So I think we need to think about relationships, which we talked about. Our kids need to know that we love them, that we like them, truly like them. Because if you lie about that, they will know, they always know, right? So we have to form those relationships, those trusting relationships. We have to be warm demanders, as Doretta Hammond says, right? Warm demanders, so that we expect great things from them, we convince them of their own brilliance, and we help them reach their potential. And then we have to have a solid, safe and supportive environment for our students to thrive in. They need to be able to see themselves, see examples of excellence, and not just in February, but year round and in every subject. And I think the third thing we need to do is to make sure our programming is culturally and historically responsive and relevant. And I heard you talk about Goldie Muhammad, and you know, her framework that she uses for lesson planning is so supportive towards that goal, because when you plan lessons thinking about identity, what are our Black students going to learn about themselves or others? And then of course their skills, what are they going to learn? Intellect, what are they becoming smarter about? Criticality, which is how are we going to help them learn to disrupt oppressive systems? right? And then of course, joy. And joy is so important because it's joy that helped our ancestors get through some of the hardest times. So we bring joy into the curriculum. Our students are going to be resilient. They're going to push through, and they're going to thrive. So I think as an educator, if we deeply believe in our students and we make sure that we have those solid relationships, the safe environment for them, and the programming, we can set those high, we must set those high standards, and then we can actually demand that they reach them lovingly. As a parent, for me, it means, you know, my children have been blessed because I had no Black educators, but my kids have had some. So my youngest daughter has a Black principal, and setting high standards for my daughter meant that that principal allowed her to lead in that school, gave her opportunity after opportunity. You know, there's a delegation from Germany, and it was my daughter greeting them. She, you know, giving students the opportunities and providing them with the skills to excel. And even when it came to my daughter going to high school, there are regional programs in Peel that you have to apply to. The representation of Black students is really, really low. But this principal said to my child, you will go to this school, this regional program, this sci-tech program, because you can. She had never thought about her ability to go before then, but the principal put it in her ear, supported her through it, and now she's at that program in high school. For my my son, who's 17, you know, he had a teacher who gave him maybe a 70 or something like this. And she's like, oh, he's doing great. He's doing great. And for me, it was like, well, not really. Like, why would you think that is the best that my child can do? So I think that, you know, not being satisfied unless you see the child working their best and doing everything they can, not thinking that's all they can do. Setting high standards for kids means that we push them to be their absolute best in all things.
Thank you so much. I'm going to stop this screen sharing before I go on to Doreen's question. You said something, Trina, that I need to jump on. You said something that I need to jump on, and I want teachers to listen to this. You said, put it in our ears. I remember about 7 or 8 years ago, I was in a workshop, and I wasn't the presenter, I was just one of the participants. And the panel of people were talking about the ways in which students are tapped. You know, you tap this one for this to say, you should go this. You know, we tap, you should maybe consider this. I've done it to students. Maybe you should apply for this. Maybe you should consider this. And I want my students to listen to this. And I will never forget. I'm sure I have the notes somewhere. About for the next 5 or so workshops afterwards, I would repeat the story and I would say to teachers, who gets tapped? When I say to you, when Matthew said to you, disrupt whiteness, when we say disrupt deficit thinking, I want you to listen to me. When we say disrupt anti-blackness, when we say disrupt anti this, anti that, we are talking about the ways in which you not just disrupt by saying something, but the ways you build. I always tell people, I am a good disruptor, but I am a hell of a builder. Oh, when you see me, I come with my bricks and my cement and my blocks. I am a builder. I am a person who believes in building. So when you said that, I just remember that story about when you said the principal put it in her ear. I am asking, how do we tap? Which student gets tapped? And as a Black educator, you have to understand the ways in which you tap students, not just Black students, but remember, we Black students have been disproportionately tapped for opportunities. You go to some school, especially performing arts school, you see who is always on the stage. You see it all the time. It's not by chance. Adults like you and I watch auditions. And I'm going to tell you one more story before I move on to you, Doreen. So this is going to be a good story, an Oisy story. I want you to listen to this story. So in 2018, when I started teaching at Oisy part-time, so I came to Oisy, I've been teaching course part-time here and there. I made a big bold move to apply for a job in the day That means I would have to stop teaching and be a substitute teacher. I couldn't get any LTO because I was going to spend most of my days at OISE. And I got enough courses. I started being the life of OISE. I started doing the most. Then they came to the first year I was there. Now we came to February. So I'm teaching September, October, November, December, January, February, and it's March. And it comes to the annual research conference. All our students at OISE here do participate in a research conference. Because of who I am and my skill set, I was asked to be the MC. So I was the MC in 2018, 2019, and 2020, being the MC for those 2 years, 2018, 2019. As the MC, I am also on the planning committee. I want you to watch this. This is being recorded. I want you to understand context. So as the MC, I am on the planning committee. I am the only Black person there, but I'm also one of only 3 Black people in the entire, I'm talking about over 90 something sessionals. So now I have a little bit of access to plan something. I got the panel of judges. So it's the panel planning it, and I am the MC. So they gave me the letter, the list with all the judges. I look and I saw 5 white people who are going to be the judges. So at that time, I'm not even a full-time job. I'm looking a job. I'm outsider looking in. And I said, are these the judges? And they said, yes. And I said, we're going to have, that I'm 14 finalists. These students are very diverse. We had Black finalists. We had racialized finalists. I said, we're going to have a panel of white judges. I said, that's so yesterday, because that's how I talk. I said, we have to stop this. Not everybody was happy with my statement. Let's just put it as that, because it's being recorded, which is fine. You know what I did? Audience? I called 2 Black principals that I knew. And I said, I need you to be a judge at this thing at OISE. I am new here, blah, 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 blah. They both agreed. And I uninvited 2 white people and invited 2 of the Black persons. I want you to understand intentionality. When I said uninvite, it doesn't mean I was rude. It doesn't mean I tilt over the table. It doesn't mean I demonstrated and tried to, disrupt the entire event. It was a beautiful, powerful email to say we are intentionally trying to diversify the judges panel. And at this time, we're going to ask if you would step back. They lovingly, happily step back, because these are the same people who are embedded in equity. So they wasn't offended, hopefully. And then I invited 2 other persons. I want you to understand, you can be more intentional. You have to be more intentional. Some of us, we don't know how to be intentional yet. So I want us to do that. So jump right into your question, because I saw a comment in the box from one of my amazing colleagues there, Claudette Rutherford, talking about community and the ways in which she has learned from community. So your question for me, Doreen, as we have this statement, Bettina Love said, I graduated because I had what felt like an entire football team blocking for me. I survived. I am now thriving. Intentional words, because my grit and zest were protected. One of my students in the room here, Nadia, we had a beautiful discussion about resilience. And I want them to understand that I want us to move to another level, but not that we don't remain resilient. We have to be resilient. I am still being resilient as I speak because of certain situations. But as she said, I am now thriving because my grit and zest, resilience, were protected, nourished, and cherished, not only by teachers and coaches, but also by my community. So my question for you, Doreen, is many people say we are no longer in community as we should. Many of us are in the me, myself, and I era. That's the era many of us are into, the me, myself, and I era. Why is it important that we understand the value of community?
Thank you so much, Dr. ABC, for this question. And when I saw it, I was like, are people really in the me, myself, and I era? Because it doesn't work for you. And I know, and I was talking a bit about the creation of this course, I know what it's like to be isolated. And it wasn't by choice at all. I want to create a Black-centered course in the Halton region. My board, in terms of Black educators, we make up less than 1%. Just so you know, in my school, there are 2 Black teachers, over 170 staff, over 3,000 students. Okay. And when I created this course, it was at the height of the pandemic in 2020. So we were isolated. And I'm moving to this new school, very hopeful, driven, empowered to really make a change within the education system. And, you know, I definitely had some support, but I know some people said, of course, like that won't run here. No. And you talk about grit, zest, and resilience and building community intentionally. I had to intentionally go outside of my board because it wasn't going to serve me, right? I had to go tap other educators that have been doing the work in Windsor. A couple educators there had run a similar course in Peel, Natalie Steele, and do all this legwork to try to get something, right? And it was really, really hard. It was daunting. It took a toll on me spiritually, mentally, emotionally. My therapist made a lot of money that year. I'm telling you, it was not easy. But the beauty in that is by being intentional with community and continuing to be in spaces and putting yourself out there, I get to connect with other Black educators, and a lot of them are here, right? You meet this woman who knows this woman who knows this woman, and I learned, oh, maybe I can do my master's. And then 2 years ago, I was very much in this space, learning like a lot of you graduate students in Dr.ABC's class. And then from there, as I continue to grow and build community, Shalita has been a great source for me in terms of support. And now I've curated a group of Black women I know, and racialized women too, that can support me, right? Last night, I was even in community. And Dr.ABC, we talk about the value of community, but you talked about it today on Facebook Live. What are we doing to give back to community? That's key, because there's so much pouring that I know I've received. And I'll share a story in a couple of seconds. But the value of community is important because it's empowering and it helps move the work forward. And there's nothing like Black folks, especially Black women, mobilizing. And we're doing that. And there's going to be fruitful things that are going to be coming from that. And another thing too, I want to talk about. So Dr. ABC, I've shared how he has built so much community. One story I want to share is from that Black Excellence brunch. I had the honor of doing the land acknowledgement, and I'm a dark-skinned woman. And growing up, again, in the Halton region, my cousin Tina knows, I wasn't getting asked to go to the dance. They were all the blonde girls, you know, the Sallys, the Melissa, they were all going to the dance. No one asked me to go to the dance. You know what? I wouldn't have been allowed to go to the dance anyways because of my African mom. It's fun. But still, on that day, a woman came up to me at my table and she said, "You have beautiful dark skin." She said, "Do you want to be, and I want you to be in my book." This is what happened at the Black Excellence brunch. The way I was poured into that day, what other space can I enter as a Black dark-skinned woman where someone will see that beauty in me? That's the value of community. You have people that look like you that see your beauty, because it doesn't happen every day. Only when I'm in Ghana and in special community spaces here that people see my true beauty. So it's very, very important. And we have to be intentional about connecting with community. I think Claudette said that in the space too, so that we can continue to do this work.
Wow, thank you so much. Wow. It's the community needs us and we need community. It's both ways. Community needs us and we need community. It's funny you say that. I had somebody reaching out to me to say, when are you selling the tickets, Dr. ABC? And I said, "Oh, soon, I'm working on stuff." She said, no, I need to know something because I need to get 2 tables for my school. Literally, that was a conversation, because she said, what I got, I want other people to get some of that. And I want you to understand the intentionality with that. It's not about the money. It's never about that. It was about the ways in which, and I don't want to get into that too much, but there's so much we have to be careful of when we are pouring into community, because what happened is that we are doing something for community, and all of a sudden capitalism seeps in and want to say, why don't you do this? And I've said to people, no, well, that's not what this is about. No. Oh, you could have a lot of people to get tables and sell tables. I said, that's not what I'm trying to do. I am trying to get Black people to come together to literally live their best life. I want to hear people laughing from the car park, and I want to see good food, and I want to see good conversation. If I tell you the conversation I have with the people about the food, you wouldn't believe it. You said, Dr. Campbell, you did not. I would say, yes, I did. I tell the man there's going to be 200 Black people eating this food. I said, Black people like their food seasoned. And I can tell you, people commented on how good the fish and the chicken was. And I'm having a meeting with him tomorrow at 3 o'clock to let him know. Tell the chef I said, bring the same seasoning. You know what I'm saying? Because we're taking care of our own. Just so you know, I wanted to find if I could have got some jollof rice and some jerk chicken, but it's not allowed. Outside food is not allowed. But let me tell you something. I use that story with you because of the intentionality, okay? So next question, final question. I know you can barely see this one. It's coming up. Comes to you, Shalita. Just a powerful question, because I get this a lot. Aren't you tired? Does it get tiring? The other day I had a very bad experience in the middle of celebrating what happened at Oisey. In the middle of me working, the most I've worked in any September was this September. That's bar none. But I swear to you, when I said to you, I am full of so much joy, I don't even know. I don't know if I'm going to be tired next week. Maybe next week I'm going to be tired. There's so much going on in my energy with joy. And in the middle of that, something happened to me at Oisey that really hurt me 2 weeks ago. When I said hurt me. And so you ask yourself, this work is hard. It's frustrating, and it's sometimes seemingly depressing. One person cannot do it all, the heavy lifting. And you said it, Matthew, about the joy. When I tell you my joy, I'm not bragging, is intact. Because when what the incident happened, I fixed it, then I reported it to somebody way above me. And they said, oh, do you want me to do this? And I said, no. I said, no, I won't be distracted, because I said, right now I'm wrapped up in nothing but black joy. I cannot be distracted, and I won't be distracted. But I fixed it in a very powerful way that my ancestors, especially the ones who jumped overboard, would have said, my child, I got you. Because I acted very strong and very swift, and I'm proud of myself. So Shalita, this is the reality. What can we do as educators and community members to ensure we do not lose hope? And I'm going to add the word joy. What can we do?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Thanks very much, Dr. Campbell, this question. And it's funny because I'm just coming up with the emotions as the words resonate even that much harder, and I reflect on my journey to this date. And in this particular, in the role that I'm in, means that I am watching, experiencing, and observing every single day children getting harmed, every single day. And you want to use it, 2024, how is this possible? And when you are in the body that you're in, and you take on a call, and I do believe it's a call to be an educator, it's a call to say, hey, listen, I want to impact lives and make a difference, that there is a feeling sometimes that if not you, then who? There's a feeling that you have to pour in even more than sometimes you have to give. And when you are hit with resistance, when you're hit with obstacles, when you feel like as if you have, I don't understand, we are talking about the same thing 4 years later and it is still, you can really feel like as if, what is the point? And so hope is very much sometimes that part where it just seems as like clouds, it's just dissipating, it's just fading away. And so I say two things. One, and I'm always about the analogies, but one, to remember your why. Remember your why. Whether you print that out, post it up, whatever it is, you must remember your why. You must revise and revisit that why at certain points along your career. You must remember that what you are doing is not running a race with a finish line. It is not even a marathon. You are running a relay at your pace. So Dr. Campbell, you talked about I'm not in the streets kind of person. I wear heels. I don't really want to do the marching, but right. But I find the way in which I enter into this work and the way in which I advocate, disrupt, call in people to support me in it. But you are running just a leg. And all you're asked to do is to run a good run, right? Keep the baton in your hand. Don't do what the US did at the Olympics. Keep the baton in your hand and look for the person who you're ready to pass it on to. Sometimes you have to pass it on to because personal circumstances require you to pause, and that's okay. Sometimes you have to pass it on because you have done your part, and only you know when that is. No one can define that for you. So you keep in the front of your mind your why, and that what you're running is a relay with the intention to pass it on. So whatever you are creating or building, do not let it all stay with you, so that when you leave, there's a big gap and nobody else can fill that. Or people are like, oh, how I wish, oh boy, what a big loss to our system, to our classroom, to our school. So who are you bringing in so that you can pass this baton on? The other part is self-care. And we know the Audre Lorde quote, so I won't repeat it now, but self-care, I love the soft life too, and I know we talk about that, but self-care in community is critical. You must find those people who are your critical friends, the ones who are going to tell you some truths that you sometimes need to hear, like you need to take the day, like this is not your job right now, you need to step up, you need to step down. Or, you know what, I'm really worried about how hard you're going with this. I've been fortunate to have people in my life that have been critical friends, because I do need sometimes to be told to stop. I do need sometimes to be reminded that I'm not the only one, right? And I also know that it's important for me to be able to find that joy in community. And so one of the things that I started about 3 years ago was once a month I have what I call Soul Sisters Yoga, and it's just an opportunity for Black women. We come, yes, within Halton and outside of Halton, we come. And in that place and space, we engage. These people are never on time. That's the first thing. I don't know when there is no on time at all, right? But in that time that we're together, there is laughter, there are tears, there is movement, there is a giving back to our bodies. And in those 2 hours, we just love on each other. It is our space that is protected. It is what happens in the room stays in the room. But it is one way that regardless of what my month looks like, regardless of what I have to pour in to make that happen, that you come in and you know that you are not alone, not in the struggle, not in the desires that you want to achieve, but most importantly, not in the ways in which you need to feel loved and poured back into. So I think hope is really about pacing, really about community, and really about pouring back into yourself and being gentle and loving and kind to yourself as well.
Thank you so much. I hope everybody received that, because I received it. Remember your why. What brought you to this work? And I speak to a lot of teachers every now and then who are fed up, who want to give up, they're tired, they're done, they're hurt, they're bitter. And I always say, I knock on wood, and I always say, I don't want to ever come to the place where I am so hurt within the system, don't want to be there, I becomes bitter. I've never been a bitter teacher. Because like you said, I know how to move the baton on, because sometimes it's time to give up the baton and move on. And so some of us, I think a lot of us, I've spoken to Black teachers let me just say this to you. I've spoken to Black teachers who literally, somebody I spoke to 3 weeks ago, and I said, maybe it's time for you to leave this board and move on. She looked at me and said, you are unhappy? I said, 2 years ago, I met you, you are unhappy. Last year, you were unhappy, and you start the year unhappy. I said, this is not healthy. I said, this is not healthy. So we have to learn that self-care now to take care of ourselves. We have to learn that, because I don't think we're doing that well. I don't know if I can put you on the spot now, Kimberly Cato, 2 minutes to speak to us. as we wrap up. You don't have to come on camera if you don't want to, Kimberly, but I know every single thing that Shalita says, you underline. I know you. I know you. I know you. I know you. I would like for you to just underline. We are teachers. The teacher said underline it. So whatever Shalita just said to us, I want you to underline it. Kimberly Cater, speak to us. Underline that for me, please.
Thank you, thank you, thank you, Dr. ABC. I genuinely appreciate you. I appreciate every single one of you, wonderful students and teachers and caregivers and lovers of all of us in community. I appreciate you taking this time to pour out on us and to actually observe and absorb. This is the time, really, this is the season where we are all teachers, whether we're in a classroom, whether we're in our kitchen, whether we are in our homes, whether we are in at whatever job we are lined up to. We are all teachers and we are all students at the same time. So I appreciate the fact that we're learning here, and I appreciate the fact that we're pouring out. And I echo what all of those who came tonight to speak on, what they've shared, especially centering the importance of self-care. Let me tell you, you cannot pour out what you do not have in. You cannot love beyond the way you feel loved. Be a lover of yourself. Let me tell you right now, I'm in the season of falling in love with me. I love myself with such abundance. And that's why all the time I'm able to pour out so abundantly. That love isn't built on boastiness. It's not built on puffing up myself. It's built on recognition that I'm a divinely created being here on earth with purpose and destination and people who are waiting for me to stand in the fullness of my essence so that I can pour everything that is in me onto them. And for everyone who is here, understand there is divine connection, ancestors, all those things and people and entities and beings who are waiting to pour into you, to maximize your full potential, to enable you to flourish and thrive in the fullness of who you are created to be, so that you can be exactly who those who are within your sphere of influence are waiting to receive. Open yourself up to receive the love of who you were created to be in all your glory, in all your mess up, in all your perfection. All of it is important and necessary. All of it counts. Everything, even most especially those things that you're trying to hide in the corners and hide in the closets, bring them out, because there are people that those things relate to. And you need to fully embrace all of who you are so you can pour into those who are standing and waiting for you. I love you. I am so proud of you. I am so encouraged by all that you said. I'm so encouraged by all that you do. I was one of those students. I was in Halton, one of those students. I never had a Black educator or teacher. The only Black leader I ever saw was either in a janitor or in the cafeteria. I never had a Black teacher. Now I am so blessed to see that there are Black teachers, Black people mindful of the students. Continue to do what you do and call in all of us. We need you. We love you. I so appreciate you. Very, very well done.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Kimberly. Thank you so much. And Kimberly's, there's no free advertising. Don't worry. This is just genuine and personal. As a matter of fact, I must tell you something, Kimberly. You have no idea. Today, I took a screenshot of your Instagram and sent it to someone who reached out to me and said, I need to talk to a Black counselor and a Black therapist. And I said, I know two who could pour into you. And I took your screenshot and I took Gillette's screenshot and I sent it to them. And this is important. This is not the first, This is not the second, this is not the third time somebody has reached out to me. I'm telling you, not the first, second, or third. I got somebody just said, Dr. Campbell, do you know any Black whatever, you know people, blah, blah, and I sent it. So this is not a joke. People are looking for that. And it's funny enough, because Doreen, you talk about that, your vulnerability. You said in such a matter of fact way about, you know, you're getting to a therapist. You said in such a matter of fact way, and I smile, because that shows me you're where you are at. That way you are not struggling where so many people are at, where, oh my God, I don't know, think I should. You know how to ask for help. And that is so powerful. That's why you're so strong. I admire you so much. Somebody was asking about the book that the quote is from. We're using this book in my class. And it's Yolanda Celia Ruiz. We want to do more than just survive. I am also reading Goli Mohammed book. That is just amazing. I am so full. You wonder why I'm so full? Because I pour into and I drink from people. Like just now, listen to Shalita, listen to the story Trina shared. Those things light fire in me. And you may say, Dr. Campbell, really? You can light more fire? Listen, I need fire. I am carrying some serious work. Being the director of the Center for Black Studies is no, is no easy feat. If I tell you things, you'd be surprised. Community is looking to us. Community is looking to us for the work. And so I want to say thanks to everybody this evening for being here, for engaging. Just want to say to my 5708 students, if you can come online, students, if you can, you could come on picture, come on camera if you want. You don't have to, but if you want, you can come on online. Matthew Sinclair will be our guest speaker on the 30th in class for you to get some of that good stuff that he has. I told you before, I sat in workshop. I think, Matthew, I was at the Black to the Future event. Yes, that was, funny enough, that was the event, Black to the Future. And I chose your workshop and I sat in that workshop and I was like, okay, come on now. Because I was just turning on the pipe and just drinking. And that's why for me, I am like this, because I keep learning. Every time Kimberly speaks, I've listened to Shalita. And Shalita, don't you love me, Shalita? I love you. Shalita's been in my class. Shalita's been my student. And Shalita is boss woman in the board. And I go into the presence. God, I feel good. I was like, that's my student, but that's also boss woman who is the one who is arranging for me to come in and do the work in the space. And so I just want to say big up to everybody. This is community. I want you to grow. Jennifer, I see you. I see my students. I see you. I see you. And something you said, Olero, something you said, I want to piggyback on that before we close. When you ask the question from Doreen about the writing, I want you to realize that every time I keep a course about Black students, one of the things I'm most excited for when I see non-Black people show up in the space. Because I'm going to tell you this. If I could do this workshop, I'm going to tell you right now, I would do this earlier. I know you're going to love this. This is going to resonate with you strongly. I would do this workshop. I would create a workshop about mattering, loving, affirming, and caring for Black students. And I would bring it to every single white space I could. Because I want you to listen, Alera, to the data and the statistics that Matthew and Doreen shared. You are talking about having tons of Black kids in schools where there's no Black teachers. So who needs to learn about identity? I see that you got it, because I know she's very dramatic like me. We're one. We connect. We connect so well. I want you to understand those are the people who need it. So when you question sometimes, or when you're curious or you ask why I show up in white space a certain way, because I'm going to the people who are responsible for the Black children. I have Black niece, grandniece, and nephews who go to Dufferin Peel Catholic. I want to make sure those teachers understand how to love and care for Black children. So that is why your work is so powerful. That's why your course is so powerful, Doreen. And when you have the opportunity to offer that course to a whole group of white people and white students and non-Black persons, offer it. Offer it. Because they need to understand what Blackness really looks like when it's not held in deficit. They need to see Blackness when it's in all its glory. Because remember, what they see now is a lot of deficit. So we need to teach that to them all the time. Love you all. I'm going to stop the recording. Love you.